right. So Little Red Book, this Chinese app, it's like blowing up all over the internet right now. You're probably wondering what the heck is going on with all the hype.
Yeah.
Well, you sent us a huge stack of articles about it, and yeah, it looks like today we are going deep on a deep dive to try and figure out why like everyone is suddenly so obsessed with this thing.
Yeah, it's really captured a lot of attention, and for good reason. This isn't like just another social media platform. I think it's more like a window into a whole different online culture.
Totally. So first things first, can you just like give us a quick like what is Red exactly? I think some people might be hearing about it for the very first time.
Yeah, so I guess you could think of it as like a kind of a mashup of TikTok and Pinterest and like Reddit, but with a really like distinctly Chinese flavor, I guess. It's been huge in China for a while now, actually, especially among, this is interesting, young and like highly educated women.
Yeah, that's the detail that really stood out to me too. Not exactly who you would picture as like your typical social media person, right?
Yeah.
So what is making all these Americans go to a platform that's mostly in Mandarin? Is it just the new hotness, or is there more to it than that?
Well, I think a lot of it, kind of comes from the whole TikTok drama and the potential ban in the U.S. Remember that
Mm.
House bill from 2024? A lot of American users, especially creators who like rely on TikTok, were like freaking out that they were going to lose their accounts and all their content if the ban actually went through.
Right, right, yeah. The fear of like being cut off from all their communities and their income and all that. So Red became the escape route.
Exactly. It wasn't like necessarily any kind of like political motivation or anything or like affinity for Red specifically, but more like get off the ship before it sinks. And it happened so fast. Like between January 13th and 15th of this year, more than 700,000 new users downloaded Red. I mean, that's a huge amount of people.
Wow, a digital exodus. But wait, if it's mostly in Mandarin and it's designed for a Chinese audience, are we talking about a bunch of Americans who are like just wandering around in a digital foreign country?
Oh, yeah, totally. And that's what makes this whole thing really interesting. There's like this big clash of cultures going on, and it's all happening like live. I read about this one influencer who joined just out of curiosity, and she was like totally lost. She couldn't figure out like how to even use the app, the interface. It's so different from anything Americans are used to.
I can imagine. I bet it's total culture shock. Like, I don't know, landing in a country where you don't speak the language and like everything's just so weird. What are people saying about like this culture clash thing? What kinds of things are they finding surprising or funny?
Well, people are talking a lot about how, like, the beauty standards and the fashion trends are just completely different. And the food, obviously. I mean, there are so many hilarious comparisons going around between, like, that typical Americanized Chinese food and then the real authentic dishes that people are seeing on Red. It's like they're discovering a whole new world of food.
I can just imagine people's reactions to that, all those confused taste buds.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's more than just confusion, though. There's also like a sense of discovery and just amusement. So how did all these people end up on Red? Did it start with, like, I don't know, a few techie people who spread the word?
It was actually like the power of hashtags and online communities that really got people going. I mean, the hashtag TikTok refugee just exploded on Red. In 3 days, it got more than 370 million views. It became like a rallying cry for American users who are all, looking for a new place to go if TikTok got banned.
Wow, that's incredible. So it wasn't just about like switching apps. It was like finding a whole community, right? Like a sense of we're all in this together. This hashtag turned like a platform swap into a whole movement.
Exactly. And that's where you start to see some like unexpected results. It wasn't just like a digital escape route. It started this whole like back and forth direct interaction and cultural exchange between Chinese users and American users.
Wait, seriously? Like they're actually talking to each other? I mean, how does that even work with the language barrier? I'm really curious.
Well, I mean, yeah, there are definitely challenges, but people are getting creative. I read about this group of like blue collar workers in Colorado. They started posting videos on Red,
Mhm.
like answering questions that Chinese users had about everyday life in America.
Oh, wow. Okay. Like what kind of questions were they asking?
Everything, like about their jobs, their hobbies, their families, even like their hopes for the future. It's like they're
Yeah.
getting this like insider look at a world that they knew nothing about before.
So it's like they're actually getting a taste of American culture, not like through the media or something, but through like real people just talking about their lives, right?
Yeah, exactly. And on the other side, American users are being exposed to Chinese culture in a way that they probably never would have before. It's like this organic, real cultural exchange. And it's happening just because people are curious and, open to connecting with each other.
So this is like way more than just a platform swap, right? It's like this digital bridge is being built between two cultures that seem like, I don't know, totally different.
Yeah, it is, but it's a bridge that's being built on, I guess you could say shaky ground. I mean, we're talking about China here, and they're known for having really strict internet rules, like that whole Great Firewall thing.
Right. And we can't forget that like billions of social media accounts in China have been shut down, for breaking those rules.
Yeah.
So are American users like walking into a censored online space? Are they going to run into the same kind of restrictions?
I mean, yeah, that is the million-dollar question, and it's definitely something to be worried about. It makes you wonder, how long this whole thing can even last. We have to think about like what kind of stuff the Chinese government might not like and how that could impact American users.
Okay, so we've got this really cool cultural exchange happening, but there's this big question mark hanging over it all about censorship and whether American users are going to end up with the same limitations as people in China. It feels like there's got to be a twist coming up here.
Oh, there definitely is. And it's all about, the future of Red in the U.S. Will it end up like TikTok? Will the U.S. government go after it because they're worried about, like, data security and Chinese influence?
Yeah, that's the big, scary unknown, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, experts are all over the place on this one. Some are saying Red's definitely going to get banned, and others are saying it might actually get support from some unexpected places, like maybe even former President Trump.
It's a really complex situation with so many factors to consider. To really understand where things might go, we need to look at both sides. On the one hand, there are people who believe that Red is just as risky as TikTok, that it could give the Chinese government access to American user data and allow them to control what people see.
And on the other hand, there are those who think Red might actually avoid a ban. They point to things Trump has said in the past, like about having a soft spot for TikTok and how he might be willing to support Chinese apps that, he thinks are on his side. This feels like we're stepping into like a global chess game or something.
We totally are, and American users are stuck right in the middle of it.
So we have this really amazing cultural exchange going on, but the future of Red in the U.S. is totally up in the air. There are all these potential political roadblocks and security issues looming over everything. What does all this mean for the American users who made the switch to Red?
Well, I think it means they're basically navigating this like minefield where there's both opportunity and risk. They're getting to experience a totally different online culture, but they might have to deal with censorship, and they don't even know if their new online home is going to be allowed to exist in the U.S.
It's like they're pioneers,
Yeah.
venturing into this unknown digital territory. But is it worth the risk? Knowing all the potential problems? That's a question we're going to keep digging into as we continue our deep dive into the world of Red.
This is like a really wild situation, isn't it? We've got all these American users who are basically like beta testing this whole cultural exchange thing on a platform that wasn't even made for them.
Yeah. It's like they've walked into this whole parallel online universe and they're just figuring it out as they go. So let's talk about the user experience.
Uh-huh.
What's it actually like being an American user on Red? Like, what kind of stuff are they seeing? What are they even talking about?
Okay, imagine you're scrolling through your feed and like the beauty standards are totally different and the fashion trends are kind of out there and the jokes are all based on stuff you don't even get.
I'm picturing a mix of amusement and complete confusion. Like trying to read a book in another language, but you can kind of understand the pictures and get a sense of the story.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to put it. And that's what makes it so interesting, right? You've got Americans posting videos about their lives, their food, whatever's happening. And then Chinese users are responding with their own take on things. It's like two different worlds colliding.
You mentioned those blue-collar workers in Colorado earlier. That story really stuck with me. What else did you learn about their interactions with the Chinese users?
They were answering all sorts of questions like about guns, healthcare, pop culture, even dating. One guy talked about how much he loved country music, and a Chinese user sent back a video of traditional Chinese folk music. It was this totally unexpected, like, musical exchange.
That's amazing. Music really can bridge cultural gaps, huh? It seems like there's a genuine interest on both sides to learn about each other's cultures.
Totally. And it's not just music either. I read about this American influencer who posted her skincare routine, and a Chinese user responded with a tutorial on traditional Chinese medicine skincare techniques. It was like this cool blend of modern and ancient beauty stuff.
It sounds like they're not just pointing out their differences, they're actually sharing and learning from each other. It's so refreshing, compared to all the negativity and arguments you usually see online these days.
It is, but we can't forget about the challenges of this whole cultural exchange thing. We talked about the language barrier, but there's also different social norms, humor, even online etiquette. All that stuff can lead to misunderstandings.
Right, right. So how are users dealing with all this? Are there any, strategies they're using to overcome these differences?
Well, humor seems to be a big one. Like, there's a lot of content that pokes fun at the cultural differences. For example, there are videos comparing Americanized Chinese food with authentic Chinese food,
Yeah.
and the results are hilarious.
I can imagine. It's like those expectation versus reality memes, but with a cross-cultural twist.
Exactly. And it's not just food either. There are videos about fashion fails, language mix-ups, even stereotypes. But it's all done in a lighthearted way. It's like they're acknowledging the differences without letting them get in the way of connecting.
So it's like they're embracing the awkwardness and the misunderstandings,
Yeah.
and they're using humor to connect and laugh together. It reminds you that we're all human, even when our cultures seem completely different.
Exactly. That's what's so cool about this whole Red thing. It's not some planned out cultural exchange program. It's messy, it's unpredictable, and it's full of real human interaction. People are making connections, learning, and yeah, sometimes they make fools of themselves along the way.
But isn't there a risk that all this lighthearted stuff could end up trivializing the very real differences and potential conflicts between these two cultures?
I mean, yeah, that's a valid point. It's important to remember that not everything on Red is positive or productive. There are definitely examples of insensitivity, arguments, and even people trying to exploit the cultural differences for their own benefit.
So it's not all sunshine and roses. It's more like navigating this complex and constantly changing landscape where there's the potential for connection but also conflict.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating to watch. This whole Red migration is like a tiny version of the bigger challenges and opportunities we face in a world where everyone's connected.
Okay, before we get too philosophical here, let's bring it back to the listener. What we're seeing with Red is basically a reflection of what's happening online everywhere, right? Governments trying to control information, people looking for spaces where they feel comfortable and in control, and cultures bumping into each other in unexpected ways.
It's a good reminder that the online world is constantly changing and we're still figuring out the rules. What starts as a simple app migration can have a huge impact on how we connect, talk to each other, and understand each other across cultures.
So what's next for this digital bridge between America and China? Will it survive all the political pressure, censorship, and cultural differences?
That's the question we'll be diving into as we continue exploring Red. But before we get there, there's one more thing we need to talk about, something that adds a whole other layer of complexity and makes the story even more interesting.
Ooh, I love a good cliffhanger. Don't leave us in suspense. What is it?
It's the money part of it all. Remember, Red isn't just a social media platform, it's a huge e-commerce giant in China.
Wait, are you saying Red is like the Amazon of China?
hmm
So are we talking about American users suddenly becoming like shopaholics on a Chinese platform?
It could definitely happen, and that's what we're going to be talking about in the next part of our deep dive.
All right, you've got me hooked. Red is the Amazon of China.
Uh,
That adds a whole other dimension to this whole thing. So how does the whole e-commerce thing even work on Red? Is it kind of like those shoppable posts you see on Instagram, or is it a totally different animal?
it's like way more integrated. Like, imagine you're scrolling through your feed and you see, I don't know, some cool new gadget that someone you follow is reviewing, and boom, you can just buy it right there, right in the app.
Oh, wow. So it's not just seeing ads, it's like getting recommendations and reviews from like actual people you trust all in one place. That's pretty slick.
Yeah.
But will Americans like actually go for this? I mean, we're used to Amazon, Target, all the big names.
That's the million-dollar question, right? And there are some like cultural differences in how people shop too. Like in China, people are way more comfortable with mobile payments and buying stuff through social media.
Right, right. And there's the whole trust thing. Are Americans really going to be okay with giving their payment info to a Chinese company? Especially with everything going on politically right now?
Yeah, it's a valid concern. There's definitely like some hesitation, maybe even some suspicion from some American users. But there's also this like growing curiosity about Chinese products and brands.
Oh, yeah, I can see that. It's like that whole exotic appeal, like wanting to find something new and different that you wouldn't find just anywhere. Are there like any specific things that are really popular with American users on Red?
Skincare and beauty products are like really big.
Yeah.
There's a huge interest in like traditional Chinese medicine, natural ingredients, all that stuff you don't usually see in Western brands. And then there's like the whole world of Chinese fashion and accessories. It's so different from what you'd find in American stores.
So it's not just about buying products. It's almost like tapping into a whole different aesthetic, a different way of, I don't know, expressing yourself through fashion and beauty.
Exactly. And that's what makes the whole e-commerce side of Red so fascinating, you know? It's not just about buying stuff, it's like experiencing a whole different consumer culture.
All right, so we've got this whole cultural exchange thing happening, this potential for like shaking up the whole e-commerce world, and a ton of uncertainty about what's going to happen next. It's a lot. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to the listener one last time. So what does all this mean for you? Why should you care about what's going on with Red, even if you never even used it?
I think it's a sneak peek into the future of how we're all going to be interacting online. A future where cultures are mixing, economies are all tangled up, and the lines between social media, shopping, and global communication are all blurred. Red is like I don't know, like a mini version of all the challenges and opportunities we face in a world where we're all so connected.
So whether Red makes it through all the political stuff or becomes the next big shopping destination for Americans, it's a story worth paying attention to. It reminds us that the digital world is constantly changing, and the things we do online have, like, real-world consequences, you know?
Totally. And that's what makes this whole deep dive so interesting. It's not just about some app, it's about understanding the forces that are shaping our world and like where we fit into all of it.
Couldn't have said it better myself. We've covered a lot of ground today. From the whole TikTok exodus to the culture clashes on Red to the potential for like changing how we all shop online. It's been a wild ride, and I hope you, the listener, have found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we have.
And remember, this is just the beginning,
Wow.
right? The
Yeah.
whole red migration is still happening, and who knows what's going to happen next. But one thing's for sure, this is a story that's going to keep pushing us to rethink our assumptions and how we see the digital world.
So true.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes peeled, keep those minds open, and as always, thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.